Welcome to the Professional Development course, Child Abuse and Neglect, Child Sexual Abuse and Reporting, brought to you by Kayamishi Tech's Workforce and Economic Development. In this video we will cover: what is child abuse? Types of child abuse. Symptoms of child abuse. Mandatory reporting. Barriers to reporting. Oklahoma Law Title 10 Section 7102. Oklahoma statutes define child abuse as harm or threatened harm to a child's health, safety, or welfare by a person responsible for the child. This includes non-accidental physical or mental injury, sexual abuse, or neglect, Title 10, Section 7102. Neglect is the failure or omission to provide a child adequate food, clothing, shelter, medical care, protection, supervision, or special care made necessary by the physical or mental condition of the child. Abandonment is also a type of neglect. Physical abuse is non-accidental physical injury to a child under the age of 18. Sexual abuse, which also includes sexual exploitation, means any sexual activity or propositioning between an adult and a child for the purpose of sexually stimulating the adult, the child, or others. This can include rape, sodomy, incest, lewd or indecent acts or proposals, prostitution, obscene photography, and deliberate exposure to adult pornography or adult sex acts. Emotional abuse is an injury to a child's psychological growth and development resulting from incessant rejecting, criticizing, terrorizing, isolating, exploiting, corrupting, and denying emotional responsiveness. Types of child abuse. Any intentional harm or mistreatment to a child under 18 years old is considered child abuse. Child abuse takes many forms, which often occur at the same time. Physical abuse. Physical child abuse occurs when a child is purposely physically injured or put at risk of harm by another person. Sexual abuse. Sexual child abuse is any sexual activity with a child, such as fondling, oral genital contact, intercourse, exploitation or exposure to child pornography. Emotional abuse. Emotional child abuse means injuring a child's self-esteem or emotional well-being. It includes verbal and emotional assault, such as continually belittling or berating a child, as well as isolating, ignoring, or rejecting a child. Medical abuse. Medical child abuse occurs when someone gives false information about illness in a child that requires medical attention, putting the child at risk of injury and unnecessary medical care. Neglect. Child neglect is failure to provide adequate food, shelter, affection, supervision, education, or dental or medical care. In many cases, child abuse is done by someone the child knows and trusts, often a parent or other relative. If you suspect child abuse, report the abuse to the proper authorities. Symptoms of child abuse. A child who's being abused may feel guilty, ashamed, or confused. He or she may be afraid to tell anyone about the abuse, especially if the abuser is a parent, other relative, or family friend. That's why it's vital to watch for red flags, such as withdrawal from friends or usual activities, changes in behavior, such as aggression, anger, hostility, or hyperactivity, or changes in school performance, depression, anxiety, or unusual fears, or a sudden loss of self-confidence, an apparent lack of supervision, frequent absences from school, reluctance to leave school activities, as if he or she doesn't want to go home, attempts at running away, rebellious or defiant behavior, self-harm or attempts at suicide. Specific signs and symptoms depend on the type of abuse and can vary. Keep in mind that warning signs are just that, warning signs. The presence of warning signs doesn't necessarily mean that a child is being abused. Physical abuse signs and symptoms. Unexplained injuries, such as bruises, fractures, or burns. Injuries that don't match the given explanation. Sexual abuse signs and symptoms. Sexual behavior or knowledge that's inappropriate for the child's age. Pregnancy or a sexually transmitted infection. Blood in the child's underwear. Statements that he or she was sexually abused. Inappropriate sexual contact with other children. Emotional abuse signs and symptoms. Delayed or inappropriate emotional development. Loss of self-confidence or self-esteem. Social withdrawal or a loss of interest or enthusiasm. Depression. Avoidance of certain situations, such as refusing to go to school or ride the bus. Desperately seeks affection. A decrease in school performance or loss of interest in school. Loss of previously acquired developmental skills. Neglect signs and symptoms. Poor growth or weight gain or being overweight. Poor hygiene. Lack of clothing or supplies to meet physical needs. Taking food or money without permission. Hiding food for later. Poor record of school attendance. Lack of appropriate attention for medical, dental or psychological problems or lack of necessary follow-up care. Parental behavior. Sometimes a parent's demeanor or behavior sends red flags about child abuse. Warning signs include a parent who shows little concern for the child. Appears unable to recognize physical or emotional distress in the child. Blames the child for the problems. Consistently belittles or berates the child, and describes the child with negative terms, such as worthless or evil. Expects the child to provide him or her with attention and care and seems jealous of other family members getting attention from the child. Uses harsh physical discipline. Demands an inappropriate level of physical or academic performance. Severely limits the child's contact with others. Offers conflicting or unconvincing explanations for a child's injuries or no explanation at all. Child health experts condemn the use of violence in any form, but some people still use corporal punishment, such as spanking, as a way to discipline their children. Any corporal punishment may leave emotional scars. Parental behaviors that cause pain, physical injury or emotional trauma, even when done in the name of discipline, could be child abuse. Who is a mandatory reporter? A person who is required by law to report reasonable suspicions of abuse. Mandatory reporters must report when a child has been abused, is being abused, or is in danger of being abused. Mandatory reporting according to Oklahoma state law. Every physician or surgeon, including doctors of medicine and dentistry, licensed osteopathic physicians, residents and interns, examining, attending or treating a child under the age of 18. Registered nurse examining, attending or treating such a child in the absence of a physician or C-surgeon. Teacher of any child under the age of 18 years. And any other person having reason to believe that a child under the age of 18 years is a victim of abuse or neglect. If you are an administrator, teacher, or staff member of a school in the state of Oklahoma, you are a mandatory reporter. In addition to contacting DHS, it would also behoove the school district to ensure that any potentially criminal activity is reported to local law enforcement. Failure to notify law enforcement could result in charges being filed if someone were aware of criminal activity and did not report that activity. This could be construed as obstruction of justice and/or an accessory after the fact to the crime. Whether or not charges would be filed would be at the discretion of the local district attorney. Reporting. Teachers/school staff oftentimes underestimate how valuable they are to child welfare workers. Your students trust you and are more likely to tell you details of their lives. You each have more information on your students than anyone else could ever gather. By teachers and child welfare working together and sharing information, we can positively impact children and families in your county. If you believe a child is being abused or neglected, you have a legal responsibility to report it. Reports can be made at any time to the DHS Abuse and Neglect Hotline at 1-800-522-3511. The hotline is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Or follow your school's procedures for reporting abuse. Barriers to reporting. Proof. Often the adults receiving the disclosure do not know what to do. They may not know who to call or what to say. They may feel like they have to prove that the abuse happened before they make a report, for fear that they are wrong or that the child is making it up. They may worry that it is none of their business and that they will make things worse by reporting the abuse to authorities. Reflects negatively on the school. They may worry that by reporting a colleague or community member, they will make their school or other social system look bad. They may worry that by making a report on behalf of a child, that they will lose their job or social status. They may be in utter disbelief because child sexual abuse is not something they have ever had to deal with before. Fear and normalcy. Child sexual abuse is a crime that is perpetuated in silence and secrecy. Children may not feel they have anyone to tell, because the very people who are supposed to protect them are the ones abusing them or allowing the abuse to happen. Some children may not want to get the offender in trouble or go to jail. These feelings can intensify when the perpetrator is a family member or close mentor. Some children may not think of telling anyone because sexual abuse and exploitation is seen as normal. It has been a part of their larger family systems, environments, and communities. Guilt and ignorance. Children may feel guilty and blame themselves for the abuse they endure, or for liking aspects of the relationship with the offender. Children may not tell anyone what is happening because they do not want to get in trouble, or they are afraid of what people will think of them. Some may never tell because they simply do not understand what is happening to them.